many find comfort in the light of a hearty fire, finding strength in its warmth and the dancing of flames. One might even find comfort in a gentle candlelight, the last bastion against the darkness of the night, dancing as it wards off shadows. None found more comfort in the candlelight, though, than Grace Walker, a halfling woman with chestnut brown hair and bright blue eyes, standing in stark contrast to her deeply tanned skin. Once, Grace had been a jovial woman, young and settled comfortably in a simple village in the Labette Empire called Blackhill. She lived as an acolyte to the Stormbreaker, eagerly following the teachings of the High Hand of the Holy Triad. In those days, she had been happy to simply sit by the candlelight, reading the scripture of the High Hands, reading their interpretations of the Stormbreaker's words in the comfort of her chambers. The gentle creaking of the chair she sat in against the wooden floorboards, the smell of the burning tallow of the candle mixed with the smell of the fir trees that swayed in the mountain breeze. It was on such a night as this that her world changed and the darkness would finally outweigh the candle's small light. She had been up late one night, in her reading chair, reviewing the scripture and drinking a warm cup of tea, when she heard a thud from outside of her window. Standing from her chair, she strode to the window in her nightgown to see what had made the noise. Outside, the mountains sang their lonely, ancient song, and the fir trees rustled slowly, shedding the layers of snow as it blew through the valley. Even still, there was nothing outside to be seen. Grace then returned to her reading chair, dismissing the noise and returning to the good word. As she sat and read a while longer, she felt the chill through the room, as if someone had opened a window. Reaching down beside the chair, she took a blanket and wrapped herself within it to ward off the cold, and continued her reading, relishing every word like a loving whisper from the God itself. Embrace challenges in life. Relish your suffering, for from it you will go stronger. The teachings of her God, so lovingly written out by the hand of the High Hand himself. She longed to have such a connection to the Stormbreaker himself, and in the dark she swore she heard a floorboard creak just outside of her chamber door. Standing up from her chair once again, she picked up the candle that she had been reading by and made her way to the door. Standing before it now, she listened again closely for whatever had made the noise, only for nothing to be heard. Pausing another beat, she felt a creeping dread at what might be beyond the door. Clutching her symbol to the Stormbreaker she wore around her neck, she gathered her courage and took a deep breath. Throwing the door open with a slam, she raised the candle high as she peered out into the hall, searching for the source of the creaking. The dark hallway of a human woman, much taller than she as a halfling would need, was empty. Nothing but the decorative artwork that she had placed there in this long crimson runner that stretched the length of the hallway. Taking another step out into the hall, she peered into the unerring darkness, feeling a chill run up her spine as she saw nothing. This tall hallway casting shadows throughout the whole space as her candle flickered gently in the dark. Behind her in her chambers, the window slammed open, sending the freezing winter wind and snow blustering through the room. Pulling the door closed behind her, Grace rushed to the window, fighting the wind to close it and shut off the winter chill once again. Slamming the window closed, she latched it, readjusted her nightgown that she wore, and collected the candle from the sill once more. The wind had blown the flame out, leaving only the cooling wax dripping down the candle. Finding her striker, she relit her candle before turning back into the room, where she saw that the door was slightly ajar. That was odd. She could have sworn that she had closed it. Stepping cautiously across the room, she stared at the darkness of this open door, slightly left ajar. This massive door, a door far too large for her. This was, after all, a human home. She just lived here as she pursued a life of devotion. Arriving at the door, she slowly pushed it shut, closing it with a gentle click as the mechanism locked. With a sigh, she rested her hand against the door. It is true that the night is long and dark, and that those small like her have much to fear, but it would seem that her imagination had gotten the better of her. A chill ran up her spine, though, as suddenly she became acutely aware of another presence within the room. Freezing in place, she felt fear grip her heart, like icy fingers once again. Turning around slowly, she looked into the space behind her and saw nothing in the room. Holding the candle tightly, she trembled at the feeling of eyes watching her. The window remained shut, with nothing but the clear, pale moonlight shining through. A drip of hot candle wax fell onto Grace's hand, making her flinch in pain, almost dropping the candle as it sputtered out. As she moved within the room, lit by the simple moonlight from the window, it still appeared to be empty, though she felt the presence even still. Grace could hear her heartbeat pounding in her chest as she peered throughout the room, searching. Nothing was near the bed, nothing was near her reading chair, and nothing was near her desk. And even still, she could not shake this feeling of being watched. Taking a step forward into the middle of the room, she froze with fear, the Stormbreaker's teachings returning to her mind. Look to the sky for the challenges I might send to you. Shakily, Grace looked up to the tall ceiling of the room. Clawed into the wood, there was a large, pale creature with shining red eyes, and the moment she made eye contact with it, it let out a hissing screech and fell upon her, slamming her head into the floorboards, making her black out. When Grace awoke again, she had found herself now in chains, her nightgown soiled and torn as she hung from the wall of a deep cobblestone chamber. People hung in the room around her from their own manacles. This circular chamber, seemingly shadowed in a perpetual darkness, had a series of small candles in the center of a round chamber, sputtering weakly against the dark. Casks were set into the stone walls between each of them, too far to reach each other, just close enough to be aware of when the other person next to you starts sobbing. Soft crying echoed throughout the chamber around her as more and more people began to come to from their slumber or simply whimper in the dark in fear and pain. And she became aware of two people standing outside of the chamber's doorway, hearing their soft whispers in the dark. I thought she was a little girl, but a holy woman, one said. That's all right. Halflings live long, and her devotion, she's probably untainted, hissed the next. Then let's start. Two well-dressed but pale individuals then entered the room, holding candles that shone much dimmer than normal. The two began to pour pints of whatever fluid was within these large casks, taking their time to pour a few before turning to her. Slowly, they walked with these drinks to her, standing before her with odd, sharp-toothed smiles, their vampiric fangs exposed beyond their lips. They pushed the cup to her lips, and even as she resisted, she felt the smooth, tart liquid slip past her lips and into her mouth. To her surprise, she found that it was a fine wine, yet a wine tainted by some sort of an iron taste. After these shadowed individuals finished pushing the drinks down her throat, they moved on, pouring more cups and forcing the others to drink as well. As the tingling sensation of the alcohol settled over her, and she stared into the faintly burning candles, she realized what they were doing to her. She was a distillery, refining and creating the finest of alcohols for her new vampiric owners. The candle that sat in front of her flickered weakly in the softly flowing shadow. In this dark dungeon, it finally became true. There truly was no other person in the world that appreciated a candlelight more than Grace Walker.